galactic superweapon neutralized, an ancient all-consuming parasite seemingly dealt with, and an entire Covenant armada destroyed. Halo was finished, but the war for humanity's survival was far from over. When first booting up Halo 2, players are essentially thrown into the action. You aren't given much time to think about, how did we get here? Wasn't the Chief stranded in deep space? Didn't I see Johnson die while getting his ass groped?
Sorry, Guns. It's classified.
That's about as much explanation as one gets. The game distracts you from the larger questions by bringing up a bunch of new ones that take precedent, such as who the Stu Sangheili we keep cutting to is. And that works for a lot of people. However, there was indeed a story told between Halo CE and Halo 2, a story of survival and sacrifice. Primarily told through the book Halo First Strike, the key events between Halo CE and Halo 2 have since been expanded upon, thanks especially to Halo 2 Anniversary's terminals. So today, we'll take a look at these events in good old timeline fashion. Though, this is still mostly First Strike, so be prepared for that. Halo was destroyed, and for a moment it seemed like Spartan 117, the Master Chief, along with the AI Cortana, were the only survivors. Initial scans had revealed nothing, but soon, the Soel system was alive with activity. A surviving ship from the fleet of Particular Justice is joined by an advanced scouting party sent ahead of High Charity and searching the Alpha Halo debris field. Meanwhile, Cortana detects jettisoned cryopods from the Pillar of Autumn. Among them, as would later be discovered, is the clinically dead Spartan Linda 058. During the events of the Battle of Reach, Linda had suffered extensive plasma injuries and been quickly moved into cryo. This would ultimately save her life. Moving the longsword towards the cryopods using only thrusters to avoid detection, Cortana also discovers a pelican hiding on a nearby asteroid. As the Chief exits the longsword to recover the cryopods, the pelican bursts to life, drawing the attention of the nearby Covenant ships. Thanks to masterful maneuvering by Cortana and planning by John, the Longsword and Pelican are able to move into a slingshot orbit around Basis, a moon of Threshold, the gas giant that Alpha Halo once orbited. The two ships dock, and the Master Chief and Cortana find themselves face to face with fellow survivors of the Battle of Installation 04, ONI Lieutenant Elias Haverson, ODST Corporal Locklear, Warrant Officer Sheila Pulaski, the Pelican's pilot, and to John and Cortana's surprise, Sergeant Avery J. Johnson, a man John had seemingly watched die. Johnson explains that the Flood, quote, couldn't get a taste for him, and though John and Cortana are initially wary, a scan confirms that Johnson is not infected by the Flood. With that out of the way, the group goes to work on dealing with their current situation. Loading the Pelican with Moray space mines, the dropship is sent ahead of the Longsword, remote piloted by Cortana, to draw attention and lay the mines. This in turn draws out Seraph fighters from the lead Covenant ship, creating an opening for the Longsword to enter. It's a rough landing, but the team manages to board the Covenant carrier, a DDS class later identified as the Ascendant Justice. Once inside, Cortana is plugged into the ship's systems and decompresses most of the vessel's decks, killing a majority of the crew. The survivors are made quick work of as the Chief and his complement make their way to the bridge, where they're confronted by a black-armored Sangheili. The Chief, worn out from days of near non-stop fighting on Halo and his energy shields failing, is nearly overpowered. With the help of his team, however, he manages to severely wound the Sangheili and toss it into an escape pod, jettisoning it from the Ascendant Justice. The crew is far from safe, though. A malicious Covenant AI dogging Cortana in the ship's systems, and the rest of the Covenant support fleet turning their fire towards the Ascendant Justice, it's almost a miracle that they managed to escape. While evading incoming fire, the ship is pulled into the gravity well and upper atmosphere of the gas giant Threshold. Normally, slipspace jumps would be impossible here, but with Covenant slipspace drives, Cortana makes it work. Once in slipspace, the Chief, Cortana, Haverson, Johnson, Pulaski, and Locklear discuss where to go. After a bit of debate, the Chief is able to convince Haverson that they should head to Reach. A direct course to Earth would violate security protocols, and with Reach already known to the Covenant, it made an acceptable destination. Further, if there was still any Covenant activity near the planet, they'd be unlikely to fire upon the Ascendant Justice, at least long enough for them to slip away if needed. Haverson accepts the Chief's logic and has Cortana redirect the ship. In secret, however, there was another reason the Chief wanted to head to Reach, to confirm whether his fellow Spartans had died there or not. Back in the Sol system, the disgraced Thel Vadimi would be recovered by a CAS-class assault carrier and brought to High Charity. There, he would eventually be tried for his failure to secure the Holy Ring, Halo, and his loss of the Ascendant Justice. During his captivity, Thel would send a copy of a priority broadcast log of the Battle of Installation 04 to his mentor and advisor, Lack Vadimi, wanting at least Lack to know the truth of the events that had transpired. Thel would also send a report of the events to the High Prophet of Truth himself, accepting his responsibility in the destruction of Halo while discounting reports of the demon's capabilities during the conflict. Included in the report was an analysis of the demon's armor, abilities, and weaponry. At the same time, Monitor 04343 Guilty Spark was able to escape his ring's destruction. In the wake of those events, Spark departs for the nearby gas mine in Threshold's upper atmosphere. Upon arriving, he finds a detachment of Covenant artifact hunters that had been dispatched there in the days prior, when the Covenant fleet had first arrived. Made up primarily of Sangheili and Ungoy, along with a few Kigyar, Spark finds himself under assault by the Kigyar upon arrival. A Sangheili takes action, however, cutting down the Kigyar and offering up his life in penance for the disgrace the Monitor had suffered. Spark merely asks to be taken to the group's leader. Meeting with the leader of these artifact hunters, a Sangheili named Sesarefumi, Spark begins revealing the truth behind the Halo rings, urging the Sangheili to help Spark enact flood containment measures. With the ring destroyed, Spark would need help should any flood escape from its surface. However, hearing that the object of his society's worship was actually a galaxy-killing superweapon causes an understandable crisis of faith within Sessa. Cutting off communication with any nearby ships, Sessa and Spark begin a dialogue, one that would eventually cause the Sangheili to denounce his faith and the entire Covenant. And, as Spark feared, Flood would indeed make their way to Threshold, and a new outbreak would take hold, if only for a while. A few hours after entering Slipspace, the Ascendant Justice enters the Epsilon Eridani system much sooner than originally anticipated. The group is shocked when they see the sorry state of Reach, but mystified to also find an area of the planet that had gone untouched. And more curious still, Cortana detects a signal on the UNSC E-band, a 6-note tone. John immediately recognizes it as Ali Ali Oxenfree, a signal the Spartans used during their days of training. Some of his fellow Spartans were alive. After making a plan of action, the Installation 04 survivors take a Spirit dropship, reinforced with material from the Longsword, to Reach's surface, able to slip by thanks to protocols created by Cortana. Unfortunately, Cortana's cover is blown when the Covenant AI manages to briefly take control of Ascendant Justice's communications and inform a nearby Covenant ship that the Justice had been compromised. This does, however, give Cortana the opportunity to capture and dismantle the AI, vivisecting its code line by line. She then takes out a few nearby Covenant ships before making a slipspace jump to the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system. There she'd wait until the predetermined rendezvous time with the Master Chief and team. To kill time, she analyzed the code of the Covenant AI. Upon arriving on the surface, the team is able to meet up with a few Spartan 2s, Anton 044, Grace 093, and Lee 008, along with Vice Admiral Danforth Whitcomb. After explaining the situation, what happened during Operation Red Flag and the discovery of Halo, Whitcomb fills the Chief and company in on what's been happening on Reach, namely that more Spartans and Dr. Halsey are buried under what remains of Castle Base, and his own work with a new prototype bomb, Nova Bombs, planet killers. Whitcomb had armed the ones they had with a 10-day countdown timer, hoping that either they'd be taken somewhere by the Covenant, or if not, they'd at least stop the Covenant forces on Reach. And he notes that they have about 20 hours until the bombs detonate. In light of this news, the group returns to the Spirit to head for the Menakite Mountain, where they'll extract the remaining survivors before meeting up with Cortana. Entering a large cavern that leads into the tunnels beneath the mountain, they fight past some Covenant forces and find 3 more Spartans, Fred 104, Kelly 087, and Will 043, plus Dr. Halsey, the project lead of the Spartan 2 program. Halsey, John notices, is carrying a large crystal in hand, one she found in the caverns beneath the Menakite Mountain in the 3 weeks since the team had been down there. 3 weeks since the fall of Reach, meaning the survivors of the Battle of Installation 04 had somehow arrived at Epsilon Eridani before they arrived at Alpha Halo. As Dr. Halsey would deduce later, the crystal she discovered could warp both space and time, and had done so to ensure the Halo team would arrive at Reach in time to recover it. The reunion is cut short, however, with more Covenants surrounding the group and opening fire. The team is able to escape and rendezvous with Cortana, but Kelly is severely injured during the escape, incapacitated by blasts from Hunter assault cannons while protecting Dr. Halsey. Once everyone is aboard the Ascendant Justice, the ship now fused with a Paris-class heavy frigate, the UNSC Gettysburg, for additional power, Cortana enters Slipspace, evading Covenant forces. After the jump, Halsey immediately notices that they aren't in Slipspace, or not the Slipspace they know. Usually an empty black nothingness, Slipspace being devoid of any visible light, wherever they are is noticeably blue. Removing the crystal from her pocket, it has reshaped itself into a multifaceted starburst and is emitting a ton of radiation. John immediately has Anton move it to the longsword in the docking bay, but it doesn't seem to do much for the radiation levels. Outside, Covenant ships are in pursuit. When they try to fire, their plasma beams move in every direction, disappearing and reappearing at random. To make things worse, the Ascendant Justice's plasma conduit is severely damaged, sabotaged by surviving Covenant aboard the ship. The Spartans have to go outside to repair the damage, escorted by Warrant Officer Pulaski. Pulaski, Anton, and Lee are all killed during the mission and engagement with enemy elites. In a last-ditch effort, Admiral Whitcomb is able to engage two of the Covenant ships, destroying them at point-blank range, then has Cortana drop the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice into normal space, stranding any remaining Covenant in the plasma-filled Slipspace anomaly as it collapses. In the aftermath, the unconscious John, Grace, and Will are returned to the Gettysburg and given medical attention, along with Kelly 087. Linda 058 is also removed from her cryopod as Dr. Halsey examines the possibility of resuscitating her. Upon waking, John is informed of the status of his fellow Spartans by Cortana, and of a grave discovery she made while his team was on Reach. The Covenant have found Earth, and are amassing a fleet to invade. John heads to the bridge to speak with Admiral Whitcomb and Lieutenant Haverson, where he's filled in on the broader situation and where the team is. Finding them to be near the Eridanus system, John suggests that they could go to an old insurrectionist base that might still operate there, one the Spartans infiltrated decades ago on their very first mission. With the lethal levels of radiation given off by the Slipspace crystal Halsey found, the short jump to Eridanus Secundus, the aforementioned rebel base, should be short enough to not kill everyone and allow them time to repair the ship. Their jump initiated, John heads into the medbay to talk with Dr. Halsey at her request. There she informs him that she wants to discuss Sergeant Johnson surviving his encounter with the Flood. Pulling up the sergeant's medical records revealed that he'd been afflicted with a condition known as Boren syndrome, a disease he reportedly got after the Battle of Paris 4. There, Johnson had used a crate of captured plasma grenades against invasion forces, resulting in a 1,200 rad dose of radiation. Boren syndrome is typically characterized by migraines, amnesia, and brain tumors, disrupting the electrical signals in a person's nervous system. Johnson apparently didn't finish the 30 weeks of chemotherapy to treat Boren syndrome, leaving him with a somewhat disrupted nervous system. Because of this, Johnson is more difficult to infect, allowing him to fight off the Flood. With this, Halsey gives John a choice and a final lesson. Presenting two data crystals, one containing Halsey's analysis and a possible method to counter an initial Flood infestation, and the second containing the sources for that data, she asks John to choose which to present to Lieutenant Haverson. The second crystal will give Oni a better chance of replicating Johnson's condition, but will almost certainly result in the sergeant's death, Oni certain to dissect him. Halsey wants to teach John the value of saving every life, not just the most at the cost of a few. With that, she leads him to prepare for surgery on Linda 058. Approaching the asteroid base of Eridanus Secundus, Admiral Whitcomb reaches out on a UNSC communications band to make contact, managing to ping Governor Jacob Giles. After some tension, Giles invites Whitcomb, the Master Chief, and Dr. Halsey to join him for dinner in the asteroid. As Whitcomb fills the governor in on their situation, notably that the Covenant will track them to this asteroid soon, the inevitable happens, a Covenant cruiser appearing in system. The Gettysburg Ascendant Justice manages to take it out in a rather interesting manner. The magnetic coil used by the plasma turret on the Ascendant Justice is damaged, so, at John's suggestion, Cortana reroutes the plasma to the Gettysburg's MAC cannon, using the MAC's magnetic coils to improvise a plasma turret. With the cruiser destroyed, Giles agrees to do what repair work can be done. While repairs are underway, John 117 and his fellow Spartans, thanks to Sergeant Johnson, realize that there's an opportunity to deal a massive blow to the Covenant. For once, they know where the Covenant is and can initiate a first strike against the alien hegemony. Before John can bring this plan to Admiral Whitcomb, however, Dr. Halsey manages to kidnap an unconscious Kelly 087 and make a jump into Slipspace, using a Chiroptera-class stealth vessel that was owned by Governor Giles. The smallest ship to ever have a Slipspace drive, roughly the size of a Pelican, they reportedly had their functions locked down by ONI encryption. Naturally, this was no problem for Dr. Halsey. Unknown to those she's leaving behind, Halsey is departing for the secret world of Onyx, home of the Spartan 3 program, hoping to find a way to save what remain of her Spartans, and the Spartans she finds there from the ravages of the Covenant War. Just as Halsey departs, 30 Covenant ships slip in. With no other choice, Admiral Whitcomb orders Cortana to take them to Slipspace, abandoning the people of Eridanus Secundus. In another part of the ship, noticing that the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice is making another Slipspace jump, Corporal Locklear decides he's had enough with this Forerunner Slipspace crystal. Given to him by Dr. Halsey before she departed, the crystal had killed a woman Locklear loved and would give away their position yet again. Wrapping it in C7 explosives, the Corporal sets a timed trigger, then dives for cover. Unfortunately, he would still be caught in the blast and killed. When the rest of the team, now Admiral Whitcomb, Lieutenant Haverson, Sergeant Johnson, John 117, Fred 104, Grace 093, Linda 058, and Will 043, discover the Corporal's deed, they spend a little time discussing it before John brings up the idea his Spartans had come up with: infiltrate the Covenant invasion fleet. It takes some convincing, but eventually Whitcomb approves of the plan. The Spartans will drop out of Slipspace in a Covenant dropship, aided by what is essentially a clone of Cortana created using a Covenant copy algorithm that she got from the Covenant AI, after which they'll infiltrate the fleet's command and control center, unyielding Hierophant, and destroy it. Meanwhile, Whitcomb, Haverson, Johnson, and the original Cortana will continue to Earth to warn of the invasion and deliver the intel from Halo. The Spartan team is able to infiltrate the unyielding Hierophant and set the station's reactors to detonate, though Grace 093 is killed during the mission. As the Spartans escape, they receive an Ali Oxenfree signal. To their surprise, it's Admiral Whitcomb, Lieutenant Haverson, Sergeant Johnson, and Cortana. They hadn't left straight for Earth, but instead jumped to the system's Oort cloud to recon the size of the fleet. Upon discovering its 500-plus ship composition, Whitcomb knew that detonating the unyielding Hierophant's engines wouldn't be enough. Detaching the Ascendant Justice from Gettysburg after moving the Slipspace drive into Gettysburg so they could get home, the Ascendant Justice was set on a collision course with the Hierophant, a broadcast claiming to have the Slipspace crystal the Covenant were seeking being sent out in order to draw them in. Upon boarding the Gettysburg, John notices that neither Whitcomb nor Haverson were present. Both were aboard the Ascendant Justice, pretending to have the Slipspace crystal the Covenant had invaded Reach for, had been chasing them for the last few days. The ploy works and almost all of the invasion armada are destroyed along with the Hierophant, maybe a dozen ships surviving. Their work done, the Spartans, Cortana, and Johnson begin their long journey back to Earth with a Covenant Slipspace drive, several Covenant engineers, and a ton of intel. As for the data crystals Dr. Halsey had given to John, he ultimately decides to destroy the crystal with the source for Halsey's findings, the crystal that would have resulted in Oni killing Sergeant Johnson. During the trip back to Earth, the team take time to create after-action reports on Reach, Halo, and Operation First Strike. Meanwhile, following the destruction of the invasion fleet, Tartarus, chieftain of the Gerolhanae, had 8 squadrons search the area around what used to be Eridanus Secundus, searching for the Forerunner crystal from Reach. Only 3 shards were discovered and delivered directly to the High Prophet of Truth. These shards would be vital for the Prophet's future plans, to invade Earth and activate a portal beneath its surface. A portal to the Ark. Truth orders that those who participated in the search be killed to keep the existence of these shards secret. Not a month later, Truth would order all Sangheili in the Fleet of Profound Solitude, the Fleet of Tranquil Composure, and the Fleet of Inner Knowledge to be replaced by Gerolhanae, one more step in Truth's plans to completely replace the Sangheili with the Gerolhanae. In addition, all imprisoned or criminal Gerolhanae would be released, rehabilitated, and paroled. While the survivors of Installation 04 and Reach made their way back to Earth, several other events would occur. On September 26th, Oni Agent Jameson Locke would submit a report on Supreme Commander Thel 'Vadamee and the specific threat he posed to the UNSC. The report ends with Locke recommending the assassination of 'Vadamee. On October 8th, the freighter Floral Express, which had made a random Slipspace jump to escape the destruction of Tribute, emerges in the Caffrey system, discovering Installation 03. On October 10th, the UNSC Navy's Battle Group Rhino of 3rd Fleet detects 12 unidentified vessels on the edge of the Sol system, broadcasting outdated civilian IFF codes. 11 vessels would immediately retreat into Slipspace when Battle Group Rhino approached, but the remaining ship was engaged, pursuant to standing orders to engage vessels that weren't positively identified as friendly. During the aptly named Battle of October 10th, the UNSC Totem Lake was destroyed, following reports of multiple hull breaches and boarding parties. Battle Group Rhino then regrouped at Phase Line Alpha, a UNSC-defined boundary surrounding Enceladus, and requested permission to attack the hostile vessel. The request was denied by Fleet Admiral Joseph Harper. An after-action report would be filed by October 17th. In an unknown sector of space, the Prophet of Regret would be informed that decryption of a Forerunner luminary had been completed. It reveals the location of the remaining halo rings and a method to get to the Ark. A planet designated as Erde Tyrene, Regret has his fleet of sacred consecration depart for the planet immediately. Little did the Prophet know that Erde Tyrene was the Forerunner designation for Earth, humanity's homeworld. The trip back to Earth would ultimately take more than a month, with the survivors from Installation 04 and the Battle of Reach arriving by October 19th. Oni wasted no time debriefing them and retrieving the Installation 04 data from Cortana. Captain Damian Hogarth, a man who worked closely with Dr. Halsey's rival, Colonel James Ackerson, employed an internal investigator, Dr. Veronica Clayton, to debrief the Spartans of Blue Team and, oddly, Sergeant Avery Johnson. Johnson's debrief would conclude before the Covenant invasion of Earth, but the interrogation of Blue Team, particularly Fred 104, would last into the early hours of the invasion, causing Blue Team to be separated from John 117. Meanwhile, back on Earth, just a day before the invasion, a routine seismic scan of the area beneath New Mombasa by Virgil, a subroutine of the city's superintendent AI, discovers an anomaly, what would turn out to be the portal to the Ark. And that, I do believe, covers the events that occurred from the end of Halo CE until the start of Halo 2, more or less. I left out some details that don't have defined dates that may or may not fall within the scope of this video. Ultimately though, there's really not much else to speak on here. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this freeform timeline, or at least found some of the extra details enlightening. One thing I absolutely need to bring up, however, is the Ascendant Justice. In the original text for Halo First Strike, the Ascendant Justice was identified as the flagship of a scouting party sent ahead of High Charity to scope out the Soal system. However, later media retconned things, making the Ascendant Justice part of the fleet of Particular Justice, and seemingly the main ship used by the fleet's minor prophet, the Prophet of Stewardship. If you want to know more about him, check out my Installation 04 timeline video. But more interestingly, according to this new lore, Thel 'Vadamee would board the Ascendant Justice before the end of the Battle of the Ring, implying that he was aboard when Halo was destroyed. Perhaps that black armored elite was Thel, though equally perhaps not. I've made a few assumptions in this video to smooth out some of these discrepancies, but ultimately, this is another area 343 needs to address in more direct detail at some point. Thel is blamed for the loss of the Ascendant Justice as though it were a ship with some significance, though why it is significant isn't entirely clear. But that's a topic for another day. Speaking of the Ascendant Justice, I'd like to thank Unicraken of the Sins of the Prophets team for providing me images of their DDS-class supercarrier for use in this video. To be clear, the design seen here is not canon, but a fan design that I utilized for the sake of this video. But damn does it look great. If you enjoy strategy games and always wanted a Halo-style ship battle game, check out the mod Sins of the Prophets for the game Sins of a Solar Empire Rebellion. I'd also like to thank Boss Veteran, who made a number of custom renders that were previously used in my Battle of Installation 04 video and again in today's video. He even managed to pump out a quick Sergeant Johnson for me. Be sure to check out his amazing work over on Twitter and DeviantArt. Finally, I'd like to make clear that while I endeavor to use canon material and depictions wherever possible, this video and all videos like it, from timelines to book reviews, will often use concept art and custom assets to get as close and accurate visualization for any given scene as possible. But don't take my depictions as canon, just wanted to get that out there. Anyway, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Look forward to a Battle of Earth timeline down the line. Stick around for the Patreon shoutout. And for now, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Horospis patrons. First, there's Hope, Then we have Freight, followed by SS Diko-chan, Justin Montgomery, and finally, Discombobulated Sycophant. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shoutout, check out patreon.com/HaloCanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits, such as behind-the-scenes material, including the raw audio for upcoming videos, and even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. If you really enjoy this, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.